Hello again.
Hey.
Hi. So last time after we finished the episode, we had an amazing conversation about recruitment and all the challenges and the things that we go through. So this is what we're talking again today. And I'm really excited about it because I feel like we're going to talk about the real deal today. And I think maybe you can start off by giving your view on what recruitment is today and how you view it compared to the past.
Well, I think recruitment today is all about empathy. When I initially started in recruitment, I was baptized into the function of a small agency recruitment sourcer within a boutique agency recruitment space, which is pretty cool. But I was very much taught the formula of how you source, how you build relationships, how you negotiate. And I'm still grateful to this day for this team and the people that taught me so much, because it's been my foundation and my DNA as a recruiter. And I think this is what makes me successful today, because they were so good. I'm going to give them a shout out, Moriarty Media. They were so
Yeah.
good at relationship building. They were so good at not spending money, but actually spending their time effectively with what's important. Number one, relationship building. And number two, truly understanding what the candidates want, need, and how you can connect that with your clients or clients you don't have. So that kind of stayed in my DNA as a recruiter. But in our day and age, things have shifted dramatically. I've got over 10 years of experience now. And I'm a mixed bag between agency recruitment and in-house. And I genuinely see such a shift since COVID and since AI stepped into the scene. And that's been fun. I think that's been empowering on so many fronts. But at the same time, that just meant a lot more work for us as recruiters.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think you touched on really good points. I also see a complete shift, actually. I feel it's way more focused on empathy, way more focused on the human side, because this is now how you grab people's attention, how you really win candidates over. So I think before it was way more, not everywhere or like not in every market, but it was way more an employer driven market. So I felt like it was more procedural, more like, yeah, okay, we need someone, let's interview, and then it's like different numbers. And then whoever performed the best was the one who got hired. Whereas now it's like shifted completely to hiring for potential and hiring for a cultural fit, and also being okay with, hiring someone who's maybe not as experienced, but brings in the motivation and the right attributes to be great down the line, 2 years later or something. So I think that has changed a lot. And then also the process itself, and I'm just taking this from my own way of working or like being on the side or like on the talent or recruiter side, is that I'm now back to back to back in interviews. And that is because everything is digitally now. You don't have people coming into the office, picking them up from reception, and then having like 2 hours spent with them. And just bringing in different people, coffee or whatever, like those things are not happening as much anymore. And before, I remember when I was interviewing, like for my first jobs, I had to go in for every step into the office and meet everyone face to face. And it was hours and hours of interviewing compared with, going there, being there, the aftermath. And now everything is so quick, and it's like, it feels long, right? When you say you have 5 steps, 6 steps, 7 steps, but actually it's way shorter because it's all online. So you don't have the commute anymore, or the overtime when you talk too much, after an hour latest you have to go to the next meeting, so there's not much time to do all those things, which I think have really shifted it. And then, as you mentioned as well, I think the third biggest point for me is also AI. As you said, you sometimes don't know anymore who really selects your profile or your CV, and then it goes through different systems and softwares, and then you have now AI that really chooses the most relevant profile, and then from which point onwards is then really the human there, you know? So, and before it was way more manual. I mean, we still go through 500 CVs every day, like every day, maybe not anymore, but you do that on a weekly basis. But I think it has become way more automatic, a lot of technology, and yeah, very digital.
I agree with that. I do also second what you say, that it's really back to back. It is very energy consuming. I
Yeah.
personally don't know how to do an interview without investing myself into it fully. I want to understand what is happening with this person's life, dreams, professional aspirations, how otherwise I could truly understand their motivation. Um, so it's a mix of satisfying the stakeholders, the hiring teams, and understanding the why on technical side, and skill set abilities, but also understanding the human element of it. And I think this is why I think that's never going to change for a recruiter. Hiring is still deeply human. Building trust, managing expectations, and finding alignment between candidate and company team is still at the heart of the recruiter's role. Now, it really depends what the scope of the brand is. Is it with an amazing brand presence and employer branding, or is it the opposite? Because this equally is going to be a great challenge for the recruiter.
Yeah.
It's not easy if you have to go through 600 CVs that just arrived on a Monday since you posted them on Friday. And it's not
Yeah.
easy to go through thousands and thousands of LinkedIn profiles. And sometimes you don't even have that resource. I know even from personal experience, you can't actually use LinkedIn Recruiter. What do you do then? What if you
Yeah.
don't have the budget? So it's a role where it requires so many different skills, where you need to be creative, you need to be in good communication with the internal and external teams, with candidates, and that could make or break the whole process. But yeah, I think time and energy consuming for sure. Long behold, I've forgotten the days where we would go for lunch with a candidate. I think even
Yeah.
now you can place someone, change continents with them, relocate their whole family, and they still don't even know you exist.
Yeah.
So if you get an invitation for a coffee or lunch, you kind of go, "Oh wow, wow, okay, that's cool." I don't know what's that to do with people. Do you think it's my unique experience, or do you think candidates very much show their appreciation?
No, you know what? I think it's mixed. It really
Right?
depends, I think, on the role, and also maybe even the different departments. I think engineering is very different to sales, and then marketing is very different. So I feel like there's different appreciations for different steps. I feel like, and I don't want to generalize here, but I feel engineers appreciate way more a remote setting and a remote um, process, whereas maybe someone in HR or someone in sales would appreciate more like the face to face. So I think and again, not generalizing, but I guess 90% it's like that. So I think it differs. Um, but I do think, when you were just saying, all those different challenges, I think what happens a lot is what people don't realize is that we juggle so many different people and so many different stakeholders at one given time, that this invitation to a lunch, or like you trying to show the empathy or communicate everything, sometimes can really go under. And obviously our goal is to give 100%, right, with each candidate, whether you continue with them throughout the process and you hire them, or it's just the first conversation and it might not happen now but it might happen later, you never know. But I think it's really underrated, the amount of different stakeholder points we have on a daily basis. And I think if you openly, explain that, or communicate that to candidates, they really do appreciate it way more. Whether you do have those, face-to-face gatherings or not. So yeah, I think it's all about communication and really, yeah, just being open and transparent and just, if you don't have a budget for something, to just really say it. If you do offer it, then, you know, to go for it, but then also not apply or like not kind of force people to do things that they don't want to do or they don't feel comfortable with. Because I
Absolutely.
think now with the option to be remote and do things maybe, in a more comfortable setting, I think you have to give people, you know, the option to choose and to bring out the best in their comfort zone, bring
I
out them
agree.
in the best way in their comfort zone. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's about
So sorry. No, you go, you go.
I think it's about your non-negotiables, especially when you said remote, not remote. This is a shift we noticed since COVID, especially.
Yeah.
Um, we as recruiters from that time before and after, I would say, experienced a massive shift, and I would say the roller coaster of it, because it was no hiring, then it was mass layoffs, especially in the tech industry, and you went from fighting over the same talent pool, then all of a sudden things really shifted.
Yeah.
Candidates had a lot more ownership over the process. They got a lot better, in my experience, at interviewing, at
Mhm.
getting prepared, at knowing what their non-negotiables are once you have kids. I mean, even the baby boom after COVID, um,
Mhm.
that somewhat affected me personally. But at the same time, it's kind of like you need to know your non-negotiables as a recruiter, but also as a candidate. Um,
Mm.
because as much as you may want to work remotely as an employee, the company may not be offering that.
Yeah.
But it is something that now is widely available. So I quite like that you gave this example. And often, we reach out to candidates to openly communicate these things from the get go. You know what you can't change with the stakeholder and what is moldable.
Yeah.
So we're very, especially when we're more experienced, we're very quick at suggesting ideas and seeing how we can influence the process so we can then preempt the offer stages in the best favor of the business and the candidate. But ultimately, there are non-negotiables, and I think it's about aligning that very earlier on. And I I want to touch base with you on the feedback piece, because
Mhm.
I've had very different experiences here. So once I called a candidate who I knew was going to be a no. The hiring manager just let me know straight away after the interview. But I did
Yeah.
consider that he had a big gap on his CV, and from the way he was coming across in a screening call, I just felt that he would appreciate the personal touch rather than a cold email. So I gave him a call,
Yeah.
and he nearly teared up and said, "Nobody does that." Now, openly speaking, I cannot do that for 600 candidates per headcount over the span of 3 days. So I don't do that for everyone. But
Yeah.
again, I just listened to my recruitment hunch there, and even just my person, intuition there. And I just went, okay, I need to do this for him. But I can't do that for everybody. And then
No.
I had another case where um, I did everything in my power to contact this candidate. It was almost like a 2 hours chase on multiple platforms, because there were all sorts of technical errors, to give him some feedback from his technical assessment. And he knew that this was happening because they were all on his side, the challenges to connect with him.
Mhm.
And I'm giving him this 20 minutes feedback, looking forward to empowering his career and,
Okay.
making his next interview a lot better. And then he sends me an email, "Do you mind sending that in writing?"
Oh, yeah, I had one of
Oh,
those too. I
honestly,
know, yeah.
wasn't it enough
It
that, I spent so much time trying to give you that? And then there are other candidates where you really, really do your best to be on top of your admin. And then I yesterday see some sort of frustration vibe in one of my emails. And I go, but who is this person? Don't remember that name at all. And I'm not saying that I have this phenomenal elephant memory, but yeah, I couldn't find his name even on the system. And then I realized, oh wow, this email matches so and so's email. He has first and second name completely different on his email than on his
Mhm.
CV. So I just wonder, do you think candidates understand what it means for us to to deliver feedback
Well,
and to communicate with them effectively?
yeah, so I don't think, and actually, when I got into this role, I thought, this is what you learn, right? Everyone needs feedback and everyone wants it. So it is a one size fits all approach, but it's not. This is what I learned, in my, almost 9 years now. I definitely don't think it is a generalized, wanted way of working with someone, in a process. I don't think everyone is open for it. I think it feeds also into the fact that, people do get frustrated if they have been looking for a while for jobs and, they just don't want to know anymore. They just want a yes or no, and that's it. And then you have other people who really chase you for feedback, right? So what I have now implemented for myself, and I think it works quite well, is I communicate everything very clearly from the first conversation I have. When I get to speak to someone, is I tell them straight away, if I know that they will continue, or like, obviously I usually not always know if they're going to continue straight away after my conversation, but I always say to them, if it's going to go further, you will be invited. And if it's not going further, then you will receive a very boring email, or like a generalized email that it is a no, because we only give feedback after usually the second stage. Because I think after, minimum, when someone has spoken to a department interviewer, then they should receive some sort of feedback. And I think that's fair, but not when they come to me, because it's so, like, I literally, out of so many candidates, you pick, I don't know, let's say out of 100 candidates, I pick 20. I cannot possibly call every person, for this one role, and give them detailed feedback after the first conversation. But after the second, because we receive feedback, I think that's doable. So then I do take the time. I try to call them once, two, three times. If I don't reach them, I send an email. And then I say, that this has been an unfortunate no. And if they want to have feedback, they can book themselves in. And then I give them my link, in the email. And some people do, but I'm telling you, 95% don't. They do not want to have feedback. I know. And then there are other people where, they come, and I had this as well a couple of months ago, actually, where someone was like in the final, and then I called them when it was a no. And then they were like, yeah, well, you could have just sent me an email to tell me it's a no. And I was like, okay. For finalists, we usually do put more effort in because you invested time. So I kind of explained to him. But I think he was so frustrated that he just didn't care. He just wanted to know the answer. And that's also fine. I think not everyone can deal with negative feedback. So it's down to them. But obviously, we try our best to give the best candidate experience as recruiters. So I think us trying is already enough. But yeah, you can't please everyone in this job. I think this is something you learn the hard way, with different examples. And do you ever feel that you also have people who really want the feedback, and then you give it to them, and then all they do is just argue with you?
Oh,
Did that ever happen to
you
you?
shouldn't ask me that question.
Yes. Yeah.
I think this is such a great question because at some point, because you speak to so many people, without realizing, you almost profile the type of personality you're dealing with from the first
Yeah.
5-10 minutes of the interview. And this is where you have to be super switched on with evaluating your own biases. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we need to deliver great quality and focus on that over anything. We've got to be data driven. So this is where you can be very pragmatic and switch off from that mindset, but you still pick up on what type of personality you're dealing with. And
Yeah.
that should not affect our DEI hires, right? So it's so difficult to switch it off because it's almost like you have this refined frequency now in yourself. You can work this muscle and you know how to flex it. I can tell which are going to be the troublemakers. I'm going to call them like that from the very beginning. And I almost anticipate what's going to happen next. And it's always 99.9% accurately assessed from myself in the interview process. These are the people that keep on asking for more and more and more and more and more. And they naturally don't progress much in the interview process because I think their focus is just not in the right place.
Yeah.
I think if candidates are a bit more fixated on their end goal to secure the role that they really want, then they see the recruiter as a partner rather than a gatekeeper. And once you get
Yeah.
that energy from someone in a conversation where they speak to you a bit more like you are the gatekeeper, then it's quite clear that they're not, with their eye on the ball. That makes sense, at least to
Yeah.
me. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. I totally agree.
I don't think there are that many. Um,
No.
they
I yeah, I agree. I think, like, honestly, 90%, 95% people really happy that they have received feedback, and they appreciate it, especially if it's over the phone. Um and I had even, like, this no, sorry, last week I had two people who actually booked in a video call with me, because they really wanted to get further feedback. And I really appreciate that as well. I think it's a great trait to have, to, like, wanting to improve yourself. And I think they're no better people than us to be able to help them to do so, right? But I think it's also difficult. And again, this is something that people don't see. You see yourself as that one person who has applied for this role, and and it's almost like you think you're the only one. Or obviously everyone goes in with some sort of an intention, right, into a process. But we, on the other side, deal with 10 other people like you, and everyone is different, and everyone has different skills, and everyone has a different process. And so you kind of have to constantly, as a recruiter, really adjust to the person, and really get down again into their world, or get into their world. And so I think it is way more, how can I say, tailored work if you want to do the job well, right? um
absolutely.
then you actually think, especially if you really want to treat people like a human rather than a number. And it's actually funny because I I did a post once, and I really want to mention this, and I would love to have your take on this. I did a post once, and I said I do not reply to every message I receive or every email, because it's impossible for me to do that. And I was just very honest, right? And I posted this on LinkedIn and said, like, I just don't, like, I can't do it. And it's a numbers game, right? Like, if you message me and I don't reply, you message 10 other people and one of them will reply. This is how it goes. This also goes for me. This goes for you when you reach out to candidates, right? It's for everyone. And I was just honest and said it. And the backlash I got on the comment section for this was like, oh my God, what kind of a recruiter are you? You shouldn't have, this is not the goal of our job, and whatever, whatever, which was, fair, but I was just honest. But then the amount of messages I got privately, where people were messaging me from talent or recruitment and were like, oh my God, I'm literally the same. Thank you for saying this. That makes me feel better. Or, like, saying even, hey, thank you for just being honest. I would not be able to say this out loud, but it's so true. Haha. Like, like, it was even like a joke in a way, but it's the truth, right? Like, you cannot ever finish all your to-dos on a list on a daily basis with this job, because there's, especially when you constantly tailor the feedbacks and the conversations with stakeholders, like hiring managers, founders, and then HR and the candidate, then you just never get to it. So how do you feel about this? Like, is it true? Do you think I'm exaggerating?
I don't
Or do you
know.
feel like you can reply to everyone on LinkedIn, on email, on Slack, on everything?
To be honest, I've been trying multiple things in my day to day to be able to address this, because I do really believe in honing that human element. And I
Hmm.
genuinely feel for these people, and you don't want to lose that. And there's only one way to
Yeah.
be okay with not responding to them, is just to shut that off, right? But I don't want to
Yeah.
lose that, because it helps me to do my job well. And it helps me to be a good, like, the person that I want to be and the mom that I want to be. Um, so I've tried various things. No, it's impossible to get back to everybody exactly when they're messaging you, especially if it's that one person that you send them an email, you send them one message, and they keep on sending you multiple.
Yeah.
And it almost zaps your energy that it's already on a low, because we're in back to back interviews, as you said. With the
Yeah.
shift from COVID and AI, and remote, hybrid, global, international hiring. We're in back-to-back interviews, guys,
Yeah.
gals, everybody. This means we're talking to you on one-to-one basis. Then we have our day-to-day job. We'll have our
Yeah.
internal, external meetings. We have events. We then need to have a coffee break, or God knows, maybe eat food, go to the
Yeah.
toilet. Like, we're still
For a
people,
change.
right? So
Yeah.
then we want to compile all the data we have, go through it, make sure we make a good decision so we don't disqualify somebody when we shouldn't. It takes a lot of switching between different skills, and I would say
Yeah.
preserving your energy. What I do now is I try to switch channels, for example, to help myself. I pick the candidates I want to give them a personal call for professional, personal reasons. So when I interview them, I let's say find out a detail about them, which makes me more motivated. And that's not fair, but it's because I am considering something. Maybe they had a CV gap. Maybe I invested myself into the process and I gave them some interview coaching advice, whether they
Yeah.
progressed or not. I invested myself a little bit further than maybe what the average recruiter would. But that doesn't mean I don't want to get back to the rest of my candidates. I would. It might be a bit more generic. So, for example, I did a headhunting project. I messaged 208 people. I can't possibly send them exactly the same message. Obviously, it was a template. And
Yeah.
then they get back to me. Well, I would love to have a very customized approach, but it's not possible. So again, I had a template and I just tweak a word here and there. And I love someone in our leadership from the company I work for. Wise, she said, an update is better than no update.
Yeah.
Well, something's got to give. I'm not going to be able to give them the email that I'm completely happy with, or um, the personal touch I'm completely okay with. But at least I can give them an update.
Yeah.
And I'm not always going to succeed, but I can try and I can keep on trying.
Exactly.
And what I've noticed for myself is that when I do it right away, all the way, with my best attitude, then it's better executed, rather than having to come back to a pile of procrastination. Because then you
Yeah.
have to fight with you still made the decision to not get back to them, right? So it's not that you're dealing with decision fatigue or you're not knowing what to say. We still decide not to get back to them. Um, but then it's a choice. Why did you decide to do that? So yeah, I suppose it's about managing your own energy and qualifying for yourself what's more important. But I
Absolutely.
really find it difficult to have to come back to hundreds of emails or messages on LinkedIn. So I have
Yeah.
my moments where I just go through a bulk. And then I
Yeah.
know my personal communication is suffering. So I didn't get back to all my WhatsApps and all my
Oh, yeah.
girlfriends. But that's it. My
Yeah.
social battery is gone. And
Yeah. Yeah.
they know that. They know that I will get back to them eventually. But yeah, like I said, something's got to give. There's got to be a
Oh,
compromise.
100%. I think I love my job. I really love doing what I do, but this job has really made me antisocial because by the end of the day, I do not want to talk to anybody anymore. I hate being on my phone. I always hated it, to be fair. But now I dislike it even more. I don't want to see any messages, any like no calls, just, want to do things where I don't have to use my mouth and talk to anyone or, my brain to think and, what to say, what to do. Nothing. I just want to chill and do something in the house or whatever that just relaxes me. Like this is literally how it is for me. So yeah, I do think that there, as you said, something has to give, and yeah, you can never please everybody. And this is something that it took me really long to get to that, because in the beginning I really wanted to do everything 100% right, and just and I have always this approach. I really want to treat everybody the way I want to be treated if I'm in the process, because I have also had times where I was, struggling to find a job during COVID, for example. So it was difficult, and I can really relate to, people who are actively looking and they really need to find something to provide for their families and all of those. Of course, I do understand. But the thing is, from our perspective, again, we are not just dealing with one person, with so many, and everyone has their own situation going on, and the fact that we are dealing with humans. There's constantly something changing, right? People have emotions, they have situations, they have their own mind and decisions to make. And then it doesn't just affect them, but then they have to also talk to their wives or husbands if they want to relocate, or their kids, or child care, and all these things that we also deal with, right? Like, and this shouldn't sound like we're complaining or anything, but when I do put someone in a process and I bring them through it, I have to also deal with all of those things that they are dealing with. Like, you have to dig into their world and understand what they need, what they want, and then translate all of that to the hiring team and make it happen. And, so it is a lot, right, going on at once. And I think it's just a simple rule. And I have literally a, little note next to my screen, and it just says, your 100% doesn't have to be everyone's 100%,
Mm.
and this is literally what I tell myself. Like, I try my best, but it might not be enough for everybody. And yeah, that's really my take. So my last question would be, what's your way of bringing yourself through those challenges or difficulties to manage it all?
Honing on what's important in the job, I would say most importantly is that relationship build piece and the human element. And this was going to keep us working before robots and AI take over the world.
Yeah.
Not, definitely not. I don't think we're actually going to be endangered from that perspective. Just joking.
Mm.
But this is where I kind of have grace for myself, and I have grace for my team that I work with and the candidates. So if the candidate didn't perform very well, I tried to find out in that interview why. And then it turned out he had a 2 months old baby, and I could see it on his face, and he's just an invested father. And I very well know what this means. So then I gave him immediate feedback, and I said to him, can you try and implement it? And he actually was so brilliant at that, but I still rejected him because I have to be fair for the team and for the rest of the candidates who considered this ahead of the interview. I'm not saying that there weren't any other candidates, with little babies, or they were overly tired because they were caring for their ill mother, etc., or whatever the reason may be. Point being, we have to be fair, and it's really difficult because we have to make these tough decisions. And of course, I want to help this father because my husband's been in that position I was, but this is a positive bias. So honing on that element, number one, with the human touch and empathy, but then be on top of your biases and make sure they don't come in the way of quality and how you deliver for your team, company, brand, etc. And then you just go into the formula of the process and your personal process within the process, how you communicate with candidates, how you communicate with your stakeholders. Because at the end of the day, you've got to manage it. So I have kids, which means there are times in the day before they go to sleep, I will not join a meeting, and that's it. I don't care who you are. I'm not joining that meeting because I want to spend my one-to-one time with my children, because this is why I work, so that I can provide lifestyle for them. But then they go to sleep and I pick up the laptop, and sometimes I work really late. Nobody's asking me to. No one is promoting that lifestyle. It's my personal choice, and it's something I've agreed to do with, my husband. So sometimes I go through CVs really late, past 7 p.m. I send emails, and I even am embarrassed that some of the candidates will receive them this late, try to schedule them. But at the end of the day, something's got to give, and you just have to manage it in a way that works for your team, company, client that you service, and also for the person on the other side and yourself.
Yeah, totally agree. Great. Thank you so much, Milena. It was lovely as always. And I think we have
Likewise.
endless conversations about these topics. But yeah, it was lovely. So thank you so much for your time
Thank
again.
you. Thank you for having me again.
Of course.